Good evening. Good evening. How is everyone tonight? The doctor is in. Hey, Dr. Mo.
Hey, good evening, Ricky. How you feeling tonight? Happy Hump Day.
Happy Hump Day. I am great. It's a beautiful day here after the storm in Annapolis, and we have lots of great stuff to talk about tonight.
We do have some good stuff to talk about tonight. Tonight's show is all about our hair, our skin, our nails, our care, our way. This is a topic that we don't hear enough about as we talk about Black breast cancer and what we go through and how we get to survivorship. And we really wanted to shine a light today on some great topics and some common themes. And we have an amazing lineup for you. So I'm going to introduce my doc friend, and then Ricky, you can introduce your breasties as well. But the first guest that I want to introduce is Dr. Yolanda Lindsay. And Dr. Lindsay is an internationally renowned and presented dermatologist who is board certified, specializing in medical, surgical, and cosmetic skin and hair care products, hair care for adults and children. And she has done some extensive research that focuses on skin disease in folks of color. So this is for us, by us. And she also practices the full range of medical dermatology, eczema, skin cancer, surgical treatment for benign and malignant growths. She is a native of DC and received a medical degree from the University of Maryland. She has a master's of public health from Harvard, a bachelor of science from American University, and then went on to complete her residency at Boston University at Tufts. So Dr. Lindsay, and then she's trained in cosmetology too. So, I mean, my goodness, we are just so thankful you can join us today.
So blessed to have you. Yeah, and then
we are delighted.
We have some of my awesome breasties on the line too. Kelly Southern and Cynthia Washington, and Dr. Corday is going to join us in a minute. She just finished working with her last patient. She's a podiatrist, and she's going to join us in just a few minutes as well.
Awesome. Yeah, she approached me about some questions regarding hair color and hemp, and ways to sort of get her mojo back after her breast cancer diagnosis. So Dr. Dakota is signing in shortly. She is. Hey, there she is. You look good, Doc.
There she is. Hey, girl.
Trying to keep up with you two. Hello.
All right, so let's start. Ricky, you brought up this article. I want you to tell us about the article that shook everybody who gets hair relaxers.
Yeah, this data came out in December, and it was all over the Black press. But it was a study called the Sister Study. So it was done among the sisters of breast cancer patients. So that alone is a little weird, right? Why would you just test the sisters, right? Mm-hmm. But the data was pretty frightening. It basically said that what women who regularly use permanent hair dye are more likely to develop breast cancer. So for Black women, it's 45% more likely to develop breast cancer. For white women, it's 7% more likely to develop breast cancer, which is crazy, right? It said that the use of permanent dyes every 5 to 8 weeks or more was associated with a 60% increased risk of breast cancer for Black women. Now, I don't know a lot about this study, and we've talked about this study, Monique, and I've talked about it with Regina, and I know we don't know how reliable these numbers are, but just the fact that the discrepancies are that big, it makes it alarming, right? And then you start talking about straighteners. The straightener data was using chemical straighteners in the year before enrollment in the study had an 18% increased risk of breast cancer in Black women. So I'm sorry, 31% for Black women, 18 for white women. So something's got to be there, right? Even if it's not exactly those numbers, just the fact that these chemicals are in our body must have an impact. So can you help us with this, Dr. Lindsay, a little bit, and help explain, if this data is even relevant, or how we should think about the stuff that, and we as Black women, we love to do stuff. Like, we love to do stuff. And I actually dyed my hair pink for my 60th birthday, like a little patch of it, but it was a major process. Remember that, Kelly? We had to bleach it blonde and then dye it pink. And I finally figured out how to do it myself because my hairdresser was charging me an arm and a leg to redo it every 3 weeks, which fell out. But so my whole bathroom was pink for about 6 months. But I gave up because it was too much work. So I think, we all like to do stuff and change up stuff and change it up. And you can see from Cynthia's beautiful coif today, You know, she's rocking her color and Corday's rocking some color. So help us. Should we be using this stuff or not?
Sure. So one thing you mentioned, like, why did they look at sisters? So I think one of the reasons probably they did this was to try to see what genetic impact that, because with many of these things, there is multifactorial. So it's like environment, genetics, all these things kind of coming into play. So, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is that this population is very specific. So we can't necessarily generalize this to the entire general population that doesn't have a sister with breast cancer. So that's one takeaway point. But one of the things, because I had looked at the study when it first came out, and I've become really fascinated about an area that a lot of environmental researchers are looking at something called endocrine disrupting chemicals. Have you all talked about that on the show before? But hair color, relaxers, and a lot of styling products that are present as well in a lot of products that Black women use have higher rates of endocrine disrupting hormones, which can, convert into estrogen. And we know that can probably be the link that is possibly increasing our risk, in people who develop breast cancer. So I really think it's important for us to look at ingredients that are in the products that we use. I was amazed at some of the styling products that many of us used as children. Have these high levels of endocrine disrupting hormones. And so I think we're still early in the research that's being done, but I just attended the National Medical Association conference this weekend, and we talked a lot about this in the dermatology section. So I'm really excited about more interest being taken in Black women and our health. So I think it's a start, but I think whenever these studies come out, it's really just an impetus for more research that needs to be done. But whatever I tell my patients here in the office, when in doubt, leave it out. And so that's not to say that you can't ever use any particular style, but we know that there's a cumulative effect. So in studies with relaxers, even studies that looked at hair loss, individuals that use relaxers more had like every 8 weeks versus every 12 weeks. Those individuals have a longer lifetime history of relaxers, and then they have increased outcomes, whatever that particular outcome is. So I talk to patients about that. So if you can leave these things out because it's still quite unknown, it's a good idea to, because we just really don't know the cumulative effect of using something from the age of, some people are like 6 years old, 10 years old when you start using relaxers, and then you're like 50, 60, and same thing with hair colors. So I think there are alternatives. It's just really important to look at ingredients. And so these endocrine disruptors, those are things that I want people to look up and kind of learn what some of these ingredients are that probably should be avoided.
I love that you said that.
Okay.
And I want to draw attention to the fact that, you mentioned that the different patients and the different people in these studies, they have family members with breast cancer. I think that there's some other what we call confounders, or things that can make research appear one way with respect to results, but not taking into account the unique circumstances of people. For example, live versus no live relaxers, other environmental factors, smoking, all the other risk factors for breast cancer. Those are all things that affect a woman's risk as well, not just whether or not you use a hair relaxer. And so the ideal study would really get into the weeds and the details of some of these things and try to adjust for those. So of all the women who smoked, of all the women who used live relaxers versus no live relaxers, of all the women who did certain things or had certain risk according to like a risk model. We do like the Gale and Tyra Cusick, those risk models, if they took all the women in certain risk groups even, because then that sort of adjusts for what their lifetime risk is so that you don't have an undue influence of these. So I think you're right, Doc, in that, you can, when in doubt, leave it out, but take some of this stuff with a grain of salt, in that it's not the definitive, yes, you should or should not use certain products, but you're right. It means we definitely need to do more research. So that's huge, and it is exciting.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Ricky?
I was gonna say, what's the word you use that we should be looking for? And the what?
Endocrine. So the endocrine system. So
Okay. All right. So what are those? Can you talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old and say, what are those? What do I look for on the bottle?
sure. So there's phthalates, parabens. These are all things that can alter our basically our hormones. So the endocrine system is our hormonal system, if you will. The thyroid is in there, the ovaries, the testes, all of that is in the endocrine system. So some of these, mainly parabens and phthalates, some of the fragrance products, these can shift our hormones, in such a way, and they even were found in the urine. So we know that there's a good amount of absorption, even in young children. Some of the studies that have been done out of Boston looked at these chemicals in young children, with some of the common hair lotions that many African American young people use. And so those are the things that we probably should look more into. But as Dr. Monique said, that it's not definitive, but I think for me, I know that whenever something is not known, if I could avoid it, I try to, because there are other products that don't have these things in them. And so, there are many options out there that you can just avoid them.
Mhm. I
Right.
think that's a great point, especially when you look at your individual risk factors. If you're watching, and you already have risk factors for breast cancer, then you want to do everything that you can to reduce your preventable risk, because there's preventable and non-preventable risk factors. And so if there are things you can do with respect to your diet, your lifestyle, products you put in your hair, food you put in your mouth, those are things that you want to try to optimize for sure.
Yeah, I know. Well, and also, we have a 39% recurrence rate, Black breast cancer. Here we go. So as survivors, we still have to be careful about what we're eating and putting on our bodies. So
Doesn't mean you can't use color, though. Doesn't mean that you can't, use the products that you like. Can we get into a little bit of the experience for the breasties of medically induced alopecia, hair loss from chemotherapy? What happens to nails? Were you prepared? Were you told about these things? And what would you tell people who are watching, who might be, going through some of these things themselves, or their hair never came back after chemotherapy, things like that? Talk about that experience a little bit.
Yes, I'm a 2-time breast cancer survivor. The first time I had DCIS. 8 years later, I got TNBC, triple negative breast cancer. I had the double mastectomy. I couldn't get implants. I had so many other risk factors. So I'm still flat. I did lose all my hair during chemotherapy, but I was told about it. And so I had just started going natural before I had gotten this big fro, and I was proud of its growth. And then they were like, look, you need to cut that down so it's not so much as a shock. So I cut my hair down. But before I had my second chemo treatment, my hair fell out in the shower. What little I did have. I guess I should have just went completely bald initially. So if that could be something that a future or that a prospective breast cancer patient that's going to have chemo might want to consider, is just going bald initially. I tried to take it down, little by little, but that still didn't help. I was in the shower and shampooing my hair, and it just all came out in my hand. So as far as my nails, of course, I got the black nails, the black toe nails. The nails came off. I'm still dealing with neuropathy in my feet, my fingertips a little bit, but more so in my feet. It's a whole lot better than it was. I didn't know about ice treatments. I didn't know about the ice treatments for your hands and feet when I went for my chemo, but I found out later that helped. My oncologist was like, well, we don't know if that helps or not. We don't know. It's no.
What is that? I don't even know what that is, Cynthia. What
The
is that?
ice treatments. It's like they put, like, while you're getting chemo, they put your hands and feet in ice, and it's supposed to help ward off the neuropathy. I did know of one person that it helped. I just didn't even know it existed, and I wanted to know why weren't the rules, why weren't the platforms the same? Why did somebody know about it? Why was it done at NIH or whatever, but it wasn't done where I went? Why isn't it why the standard of care the same everywhere, so that you know what your options are, and you can decide. And also, of course, about the ice cap. They told me about the ice cap that would prevent, help prevent hair loss, but you would still get hair loss. So I figured, if you're just gonna have straggling hair, why not just go bald? And I have to say that most women that I've seen with a bald head are very cute. You put on your lipstick, you put your big earrings on, and I think we are attractive with bald heads. But I'm gonna turn it over to Kelly before I've been running my mouth the whole time.
That's all right. Hey, everyone. So I'm Kelly, stage 3 breast cancer survivor, and I am actually triple positive. So I'm slightly different than most of my breasties. I'm HER2 and estrogen and all that kind of stuff. And so for my hair first. So obviously, as you see, I'm silver and I'm embracing the silver. But before I was diagnosed, I was slightly graying, right? So I had these little things that would come up here, and I was dyeing it every 2 to 3 weeks because my hair was growing pretty fast. I just kept putting a little stuff up here, putting a little stuff up there. When it came to the hair loss, I was prepared. I knew it was going to happen. And we actually had a little ceremony here at my house where my husband and my son, they cut my hair. We took pictures with them kissing my bald head and all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, okay, let's just, you that part about, right? Because visually you see that. I saw that on other breast cancer survivors. So at some point you're going to lose your hair. When my hair started to come back after I finished, so because I'm HER2, I had to do Herceptin for an additional year after my initial chemo, right? So after my initial, I guess, 6-month chemo, my hair started to come back while I was on Herceptin. But when it came back, the day that I looked in the mirror and I was still in the fuzz, it was white. Mm-hmm. And I looked in the mirror like, is this a joke? It was all white. It was just, and I was like, oh no, this can't happen. So as soon as I let it go for a little bit. So when it came back, it's the same texture. My texture pretty much stayed the same. And when it came back, it was that real short, and it was kind of cute. And I was like, oh, I think I can do this, but it was short. Then when it started to grow, I was like, I can't do this. So I literally started dyeing my hair again. I was dyeing it again. And then I started hearing about the studies, right? And I started hearing it. A couple folks said to me, Kelly, you're a breast cancer survivor. You sure you want to dye your hair? It looked really cute when it was gray. And I was like, no, I'll be fine. I'm using a henna dye, and all this kind of stuff. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I think Dr. Gary said earlier, whatever you can do to reduce your chances of recurrence, that it's easy enough for you to use, you should do it. So that's what I did. And it happened to fall around my 50th birthday. So then I decided, I'm 50, I'm free, I'm fly, I'm going to be silver. And I literally, my hair was growing, so I literally cut it back down to the gray, right? Because it was doing a little thing, the gray up here. I cut it back down, and ever since then, I've just left it silver, gray, whatever you want to call it. And I've just embraced that, and I'm okay with it. It's so funny because a lot of times if I'm out, people will come to me and ask me, what color dye am I using? And I'm like, if you only knew what I went through to get this gray hair. It's not dye, but thank you. So it's been interesting. I'm okay with it. I don't know. I'm always curious about the studies with the dye because I didn't have breast cancer in my family. I have a sister in which we have the same father who is also a breast cancer survivor. But between me and her, we've both been tested. We were all negative with the BRCA test, and nobody else in our family. So I often wondered about the dye because I was dyeing my hair for quite some time, before I was diagnosed. So that's always in the back of my head. And so today I'm just silver and free. The fingernail thing, that kind of caught me off guard. Now, I know about it. They gave me all the information. They talked about it in my appointments, but I didn't really think about it because, again, you're thinking about everything else when you're going through your treatment. And the hair is what you visually see on other survivors, so you're used to that. The fingernails kind of caught me off guard. They turned black. That was okay. And I'm used to, getting my nails done. My toes, so my feet, are my favorite part of my body. I love my feet. I feel like that's the only nice part on my body that I like these days. And we were literally at the beach and coming home, and I felt like this tingling, and I looked down, and 3 of my toenails fell off at the same time. And I remember being in the back of the car saying, honey, my toenails just fell off. And he was like, well, they told you that was going to happen. I was like, but they just plopped off, like literally in the car. Just I looked down and they said all three of them fell off at the same time. So that took a little getting used to, and it was summertime, obviously. So, you know, I had to put up the sandals because I wasn't real comfortable with it. But that kind of threw me off because you just, even though you know it's going to happen, I mean, it didn't hurt or anything. It's just a weird look, and they grew back, so it wasn't really a big deal. It's just I kind of, you know, that's the one part of my body I like. I can't even get my toes done now because there's no toenail. So other than that, I mean, I feel great about it. And I actually, you know, I probably encourage ladies to embrace their hair the way that it is. I often find, but there's another survivor, and I won't say her name or put her out there, but I met her last year. We were at I think we were at a home event or something, and she had asked about my hair, and she literally had on a wig that day. And it was a 2-day event. And when we came down the next day, because I think her hair was just growing back, she had taken her wig off and her hair was short and she was absolutely beautiful. And everybody was kind of like, oh my God, you're so gorgeous. I think it's just something about us as Black women. We are just gorgeous with or without, but in our natural state, I think we just glow. I just feel, you know, that's just my opinion, but I think it's for any of us, even Miss Cynthia, that's my girl, but I bet you if she takes off Miss,
Candy.
what you call you with?
This is Candy.
Okay, Miss Candy, her face is going to glow because I've seen her without her hair. She's beautiful with or without. So.
I love that. Dr. Dakota, talk to us.
Oh, this is Candy. Right now, I'm trying to work on my edges. I'm using a natural product from one of our Pink sisters that I'm just trying. I met on Facebook. So while I'm treating my edges, I'm putting on Candy, but I have been dyeing my hair because, you know, I feel like, sorry, Kelly, you are gorgeous, right? You are gorgeous. Your gray hair is like all you. But with me, I feel old with my gray hair, you know? I'm like, I just don't want, and I put on the questionnaire for Ricky that I'm dyeing my hair till I'm 80. You know, I'll concede to being old at 80. But right now, you know, I try to look young. And one thing that somebody says that I should take as a compliment, but it kind of bothers me. I often get asked if I'm pregnant because I'm flat and my stomach protrudes, right? So I often, and I'm like, you know, I'm over 60. No, I'm not pregnant, you know, but I just wonder how people just feel like they could just ask you that. And I'm like, I'm a breast cancer. Then something I'm like a breast cancer survivor. You
Right.
know, I have a double mastectomy, so I don't have the breast to kind of, you know, come out to hide the stomach. But they said you should take that as a compliment, you know, that somebody would think that you could be pregnant. So
I'll co-sign on the fact that 60 who? 60 where? 60
yeah,
what?
I just had a birthday, so I'm well into my 60s.
All right. Well, that's a blessing. Dr. Dakota, talk to us about hair and nails and feet. You are a podiatrist.
Yes.
Okay.
So my name is Dr. Cordia Dakota, and I am a HER2 positive breast cancer warrior. I'm currently going through treatment. I have completed my chemotherapy. I've had a lumpectomy with a negative pathology, no cancer. I have recently completed radiation and did pretty well with it, and will be starting tamoxifen actually tomorrow. And I continue on IV immunotherapy, which is Herceptin Perjeta, because I'm HER2 positive until December. So my story is that I love my hair. I've modeled for hair for Turning Heads in Harlem. I've been on the websites for different hair salons, especially my current one, which is Sultry Scissors in West Orange, New Jersey, where I'm located. So even though I knew I could lose my hair, I opted to do CoolCap. CoolCap is a type of hyperbaric oxygen or cold cap that helps preserve the follicles of your hair so that you don't have as much damage and have a full alopecia areata or a full hair loss. What they don't know is that there's not a lot of studies on African American women and what affects the success of using the CoolCap. For example, I had a short, relaxed hair. At the time of being diagnosed, I needed to get my hair done. I would get a relaxer every 4 to 5 weeks with semi-permanent color and a cut. At that time, I obviously was told I cannot color, put extensions, and was devastated. And basically had my mom just braiding the top of my longest hair and leaving the back long, natural. At that point, I did the CoolCap. Second chemotherapy session, my hair began to fall out. But the irony is the natural hair that had no color in it stayed in. My chemically altered hair, which is color and relaxer, fell out. Devastated, have a nervous breakdown in the shower because that meant that cancer was very real to me at that point. And we all know, well, I should say physicians, we know there's 3 phases of hair growth. And what we want to stay is in our anagen or our growth phase. And the cool cap is what helps preserve that. Very, uncomfortable. I had to be on Ativan, which is a type of medication that kind of relaxes you, and Benadryl. So I was high as a kite, as you can imagine, Dr. Lindsay, Dr. Gary, high as a kite on the first one. And then they kind of adjusted me out. My hair, as you can see, has grown back, and I don't believe in not coloring. I'm only 45 and I'm single. So I said, that's just not an option. So I'm using something called Earth Dye, which is a colored henna, which I've been doing, which only colors the actual gray hairs and not your naturally pigmented hair. And my oncologists have been quite fine with that. I do it probably my second time doing it now. So it was about 6 weeks. Saves me tons of money. And now I am completely natural. This is just using TGIN products, which I love. And I don't think I would go back to relaxer because of the risk of what's in the product. Low dye, no dye, low lye, doesn't matter. There are things that we absorb that do affect our endocrine system. And I believe since I was BRCA negative, that's probably part of one of the many factors for my breast cancer.
Great. Can you guys explain cold cap a little bit more, so for people who don't understand it, and sort of what it really is supposed to do scientific?
Sure. I'll start, and I guess Dr. Lindsay, you can continue on it. So cold cap, I'll break it down as a regular patient. It's supposed to preserve your hair. That's what they market it as. They say it can go anywhere from as much as 50% of your hair to 60%. However, those
hat, what is it? It's a hat. What is it?
It looks like a cap. They come in different colors based on your size of your head, and it's attached to almost like a vacuum hose that goes into a machine that's giving you hyperbaric or very, very cold temperature, almost icy-like to your hair. And that preserves the hair follicle when it reduces the temperature down while you're having chemo. It also
during chemo, you put out
during chemo. Yes, ma'am. It also extends your chemotherapy session. I was there all day long, in addition to some other things. But there's a part where it has to go cold, do the treatment, and then warm back up before they take it off your hair so they don't rip your hair out. And it was done with every chemotherapy session. In addition to that, most insurances don't cover it or cover it partially. So you're paying sometimes, I think mine was $400 a session that must be paid out of pocket to even do that. But the benefits of it is to preserve the hair follicle so that your hair hopefully will grow back and not have a permanent alopecia.
So did it work?
It did. Look at my hair. I lost the entire front of my hair and the sides of my hair. I look like George Jefferson and was completely devastated. And my hair grew back. And I've had 2 haircuts since my last full chemotherapy session, which was in mid-April. And I'm liking the shortcut. And I'm glad I did it. I wish that they would talk about it more to our sisters. A lot of times they think we can't afford it and they don't talk about it, or because there's no research on us, they figure, why talk about it? And I feel that we are a higher risk for alopecia. We should definitely have the option of saying yes or no.
Dr. Lindsay, you want to add anything about cryotherapy for hands, feet, and hair?
Sure. So Doc did a great job explaining it, but I just kind of wanted to go into, in case people don't understand why you lose your hair with chemotherapy. So 90% of our hairs are in the anagen or growth phase. About 10% are in the resting phase, and those usually shed out, which is a normal process. So what the chemotherapy is doing is this basically shutting down the hairs that are in anagen. And so that's why you get that rapid hair loss. And so basically what Doc explained is the cool cap is trying to preserve those follicles from the chemotherapy absorbing and causing something called anagen effluvium. So anagen is the growth. So normally our hairs fall out in telogen. And so with the chemotherapy, they fall out in antigen. And so the goal is for the cryotherapy or the cold treatment to prevent that from happening. And so I don't have a lot of experience administering it because on the dermatology end, I more so see patients who've already lost hair or maybe they're about to. And so I really appreciated hearing your experience of like the logistics of like, because I've never actually seen it administered. So that was really interesting. And so I like what you said, that in forums like this is really good because a lot of times our sisters are not offered treatment options because of preconceived notions. And so I think that's why you have to educate yourself, and you can come in and ask about it. I love when patients come in and ask me about various treatments. We're not offended at all. And it's a joy to work with people who are educated and really invested. And so that's what I think this is a great forum that you all are doing tonight.
Oh, thank you. I love it, you know, and the one thing I think that patients are so concerned about as soon as you hear chemotherapy is, am I going to lose my hair, right? That's probably the next question that patients ask me, no matter what stage they are. If you're stage 1, but because of the type of cancer you have to undergo chemotherapy, am I going to lose my hair? You know, I have patients who are piano players and they're technicians, they knit, they sew. And then the next questions are about being able to do the things that they need to do because of neuropathy, you know, because the chemo targets those nerves as well. And so the other part of it that you were mentioning, I think it was Cynthia, you were talking about the hands and feet. So cryotherapy for those is, you know, it's in small studies. It's not a mainstream thing just yet. You know, I'm looking at the latest study was probably about 40 patients where each patient was their own control. So one patient got a glove and a shoe, and the other patient and the other hand didn't, you know, and it's trying to reduce the effects of that peripheral neuropathy. So there are gloves that you can wear, socks that you can wear, and it prolongs your chemo, just like Dr. Dakota said. You know, it does make the session longer, but they try to make it more tolerable so you don't lose that tactile sensation. And so you can preserve some of your sensation there. So still somewhat experimental, not proven for everybody, and definitely not studied in Black women. And this is something that's huge because the cold cap is like dry ice hats, you know? And nobody talks about, well, what happens to relaxed hair and colored hair? You know, what happens to the disulfide bonds, you know, Doc, that makes it maybe a little more weak and more brittle even for something like dry ice hats to, you know, to cause that type of breakage. But that would be an amazing study, even for us to look at it, even with some of the hair care companies, they may be invested in this also, you know, because Black women care about hair. It is $1 billion industry.
That's
And
right.
we need to know what the effects of these products are, you know, on our hair and what we can do to encourage our hair to grow back quicker after these treatments, you know, because it's something that weighs on a lot of women. And it's a reason why some of them decide not to do chemotherapy. You may think that it's not a reason, but it is a big reason and a big decider for some women.
Especially if
Dr.
you've lost your breast too, especially if you've lost your breast and now you've got to like lose your hair too. So, you know, it's really a big conversation. But I don't know, that cold cap thing sounds pretty miserable to me. Like I wasn't in a happy place to be at chemo, but to have something on my head
No,
make
but
me
Ricky,
cold doesn't sound fun at all. I don't know.
but Ricky, again, I'm just gonna interject for a second. I was given medication, so I was asleep through the majority of it, incoherent,
Drugs.
and
Okay.
it felt great.
Drugs are good. Okay.
In addition to that, we were talking about with cold cap growing back your hair. One of the things that I used were oils on my hair after. I used wild growth oil, which everybody, I think a lot of Black women know about, and that helped. I also used natural oils like jojoba and avocado with a little bit of rosemary and peppermint oil on my hair. And that I can definitely tell you, my hair just started growing. And just using natural oils, which I swear by, have helped my hair grow and made my skin improve dramatically.
Let's touch on skin. I want to jump in and talk about the effects of radiation on the skin and ways to keep that skin glowing and healthy and feeling and looking good, because I think that we see a lot in textbooks about what radiation does to pink skin, to European skin. It causes redness. You're going to look like you have a tan. Well, if your skin is naturally tanned, naturally melanated, what does radiation do to the skin and how can we combat it? Dr. Lindsay, and then anybody else who wants to weigh in.
Sure. So radiation can commonly cause something called radiation dermatitis, which is a type of eczema type reaction. So in skin of color, we often don't see the redness, but we get a lot of hyperpigmentation or darkness. The skin can often be very hard and rough. And so we treat it the same way that we would treat eczema. We often use topical steroids that can help to decrease the inflammation. Moisturization is very, very key. I talk to my patients a lot about maybe using thicker creams versus lotions. Things like that can be very, very helpful. And getting on top of it quickly, because what I find is once you've been scratching for it, you know, 'cause it can be very itchy, the skin can become very thick, very thickened, and it's just kind of a little bit more difficult to control. But very, very important to know, like the reaction can look very different in darker skin versus, you know, more Caucasian skin, like more like Dr. Monique said, Dr. more red versus hyperpigmented. So, but definitely something that we have great treatments for. And so, you know, if that's something that you're dealing with, you could definitely see a dermatologist to, you know, get specific treatment for that.
Dr. Gary, I recently had radiation, so I can definitely talk about that. Dr. Lindsay, yes, I got the classic box of the hyperpigmentation of the breast.
Mhm.
And I was using lanolin as my radiation oncologist recommended. And I also used a great product from Rain, friend of mine's company, where I could literally tell her what I wanted in the product, shea butter, aloe butter, and we made a cream that I would put on my skin. So now I'm peeling and I can see the healthy skin is coming out. I'm not scarred. I did have the itching that I tried my best not to scratch as much, but that was annoying. But having the hydration for me on that area with a thick creams, that definitely worked. And shea was one of the biggest things for me with vitamin E oil, the concoction together. So I was using that and the lanolin, which I just finished lanolin as of yesterday. I'm off of it and just continuing the cream from the Rain company that has worked wonders for my skin.
I think aloe also, because radiation is damage to the cells. It's like a sunburn. It really is. And so aloe is another one that really helps to moisturize. And, you know, the thing that we do as Black women, especially, is we love our oils and our butters. But during your radiation treatment, you want to make sure you keep moisture, but not add oil that's going to essentially cook your skin. So you have to be really careful about the timing of when you put on your oils and your butters, because during your radiation treatment, you don't want to have oil on your skin. I think, Ricky, you alluded to that once, that you were putting like,
Yeah.
was it cocoa butter or baby oil or
I had
something?
baby oil on one time, and the first time I went, and they're like, no, 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 you need to go take a shower, girlfriend. But
Yeah.
but also we
Yeah.
have, you know, we have a breastie, Karen Lindsay, who has a product that's called Nirac Natural Essence, and I told her to put it in comments,
Mhm.
and she makes it in her kitchen, and it is like a wonder drug. I mean, it's amazing. And if you go to her website, go to her Facebook page, there's like before and after pictures of somebody who's been on radiation and what the impact of her cream is. And so she's, you know, she's helped a lot of us with our skin. And I use it on my grandbaby's eczema, but it's like a great, all natural product. So there's other products, like I don't know, like even my hairdresser sells Aveda, and she swears that Aveda is all natural. I don't know. What do you think about that, Dr. Lindsay? Are there any other brands we should be looking to think about?
Yeah, Aveda is definitely a nice line. I more so talk to patients about looking in terms of like shampoos. You want to probably think about a sulfate-free shampoo, because the sulfates can be very, very drying and can lead to more breakage. And so you're already dealing with, if you had chemo and things like that, and your new hair growing back may be a different texture. It may come in. I don't know if you experience, any of the ladies here experience that, where your hair may have been curly before, it may be straight. Some people's hair was straight, it may come back curly. So you really want to see how your hair, you know, is, and provide the proper products that really are geared towards the hair type that you have. Because some patients are really using the wrong, it's not really a cookie cutter approach. That's why I think working with someone that's knowledgeable is really, really helpful, so that you can get the things that are tailored to what what you do. And that's why I like my background as a cosmetologist, because I help my patients not only with the medical aspects, but a lot about products, like looking at their hair and say, you need some deep treatment. So that has nothing to do with my dermatology training. It's just knowing about, like, you need a trim, basic things, you know, deep, you need a steam treatment. And so things like that, we really need to just focus on good hair care. In terms of skin, I think it's very important. A lot of oils and butters can be very problematic if you're undergoing radiation. I like kind of water-based creams versus lotion. So I like this company called Vanny Cream because it doesn't have any dyes, parabens, formaldehyde releasers. Those are all ingredients that can cause contact dermatitis. So you don't want to add that type of dermatitis also to the radiation dermatitis. So you want to kind of keep things very simple, because even though something is all natural, that doesn't mean you can't get a reaction to it. There's been papers that things like lavender oil, people can get a reaction to. So I want people to, and I know in our community, we love natural, we love essential oils, which I do love, but that doesn't mean that you can't get a reaction to it. So I always recommend doing a patch test. You can use a small area. You don't want to go putting this stuff all over your skin before you know how you're going to react to it.
That's a great point. Can you put the name of that line in the comments too? That way people will be able to reference it and look it up for themselves.
Sure, I'll do that.
Great.
I wanted to mention real quick, so when I had the radiation, which I thought was going to be the easiest part of the treatment, it ended up being probably one of the hardest because I was exhausted quickly in. But I got the burns, and then all of a sudden my skin literally just like came off one night. Like I woke up one morning and it was just raw. All the skin had come off. And it was during the radiation. So when I went in the next morning from the radiation, the doctor, they check you out before you start. And she gave me a cream, which I don't remember what it was. And I'm glad I don't. But whatever it was she gave me, it actually made it worse. So the next day, that night, I called her and I was in tears because it was hurting so bad. I literally couldn't even sleep with a shirt. So she ended up calling in, or not calling in a prescription, but she sent me to the store to get these things called, I could be saying it incorrectly, Dumbaro packet.
Dumbaro, yeah.
Yeah, and that worked excellent. Like literally within a day or two, it had kind of dried up the skin and started the whole healing process. So I don't know if that's something that you recommend or if anybody else had to use that, but it worked like really quick in cleaning up the burns and kind of drying them out because it was like really raw and red and it was bad.
Yeah, it's really good at drying up things that are weeping. So it's like, and so it's really good at drying up. So if something is already dry, you don't want to use that. But for things that are weeping, like what you had, that's a great option.
Yeah.
The thing
A
about
similar experience.
Yeah.
For anybody who is watching who may have a recent diagnosis, the size of your breast can affect how your radiation is administered. It can affect the positioning, the dosage, the duration. And, I think it's important as surgeons that we make sure we offer patients things that will improve their quality of life. If you have large pendulous breasts, if you have back pain, neck pain, et cetera, a lift, a reduction can certainly help with those things, even for early stage breast cancer, even for DCIS. And so making sure that your surgeons and your doctors talk to you about all of your options, I think is really an important part of the conversation, not just wait till you get to radiation, but to even talk about those things when you are initially diagnosed. What are your wishes? What are your challenges? How will, this therapy affect your breasts, not just from surgery, but throughout the process? We talk early, at least I talk early with my patients about what chemotherapy is going to do for their skin and their nails, and even the anti-estrogen therapy, the tamoxifen, the aromatase inhibitors, they have an effect on hair too, don't they, Doc?
Yeah, they can. I have seen a couple of patients develop excessive shedding while on these. And, I never encourage patients not to, because many patients like, do you want me to stop? And I'm like, no, you're not. You talk to your doctor about it. But many times we can treat through, the excessive shedding. There are different, we call them nutraceuticals, which are kind of supplements that have elements in them which can lengthen the anagen phase of the growth cycle. So one of the ones that we have in our office that I like is called Viviscal Pro. This is one I use a lot when people are having a lot of shedding. So So I think it's important to just talk to your doctor before, making rash decisions, because many times we can treat through the side effects that are happening. So you get the benefits that we need for, cancer prevention for going forward, as well as, the hair effects that may happen.
So Dr. Lindsay, some of us don't have lovely Black women doctors like you to talk to our doctor about. And I think, my radiologist was an old white man. He had no clue about even, I thought, can I put some lotion on my skin because I have my ash? He had no clue what I was talking about. So I think that's the issue. And a lot of the, even the products that are out there are not, we don't know if they're good for Black women. That's our dilemma, really just with Black breast cancer alone. So is there any source of information or anything we can, go to find stuff that's specifically good for Black women and our skin and our bodies?
Sure. I mean, my recommendation is usually to, seek out. There's a group of us, and one of our colleagues created a website called blackdermdirectory.com. And you can, and many of us do virtual visits with people now in the age of COVID. That's very, very common. So, because I think those extra elements, those are the things that lead to high patient satisfaction when you have someone who uses probably the same type of products that you might use. And so I can speak from personal experience of trying this versus that. And so that's something that I think is a great resource, because many of us live in areas where there's not a lot of physicians of color. And so you can maybe work with someone virtually. You may only need one visit, really to just kind of discuss and get some specific recommendations versus going and trying a whole bunch of things and spending a ton of money, more so you can get something tailored for your needs.
And Ricky, for the podiatry aspect in terms of neuropathy and the nails, we have an organization called Sisters in Podiatry where you can find an African-American female podiatrist across the United States, which I'm one of the co-founders of the group. So Sisters in Podiatry, we're on Facebook, and we're more than welcome to help women of color who want information on, exactly looking for a Black dermatologist for your questions, just like looking for a Black podiatrist for the foot, the neuropathy, the nail issues that we see that we're probably a little bit better versed in when it comes to people of color.
Mm-hmm.
Well, doctor, I'm still suffering with neuropathy in my feet. And what can you recommend? I've been through a whole host of treatment, acupuncture, laser, vibration. I've just been through, a bunch of different treatments. Is there any other thing that's left for me to try? I mean,
Absolutely.
I still am able to drive, thank God. At first I wasn't, I have gotten to the point where I can drive, but is there anything else available to,
There are prescribed medications such as gabapentin, Lyrica. Those are two common medications that are given for patients with peripheral neuropathy, meaning numbness of the extremities due to something such as a metabolic reason, a traumatic reason, and also for the common patients that we see are diabetic neuropathy patients. And depending on dosage, we have patients feel pretty good while on the medication. Also, Metnex, which is a vitamin B complex, is another good option for patients who are having issues with neuropathy. Sometimes if their vitamin B12 is fluctuating, but definitely in conjunction with some of the medications that are previously listed. And that I would definitely say, you could see your podiatrist, such as myself, who would be able to look at your labs and tailor what medication is right for you and at what dosage.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to stay away from medical treatment and doing like more natural treatment. I just was wondering if will the nerves ever, I know my oncologist said in about 10 years, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
The nerves regenerate super, super slowly, and so, I think something like a 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter a year or something really slow. So I think that the rate at which your nerves are going to come back is very variable. I do want to toss something else in the mix, and this comes also from a question that we have in the chat But CBD, right? It's the new apple cider vinegar, it's the new cauliflower,
Right.
it's the new Robitussin, castor oil, whatever your favorite cure-all is. CBD is now the favorite cure-all of everybody. But there is some data. There's some clinical trials in particular that are starting to look at CBD for peripheral neuropathy.
Right.
It has an anti-inflammatory effect on the cells in the skin. And so for radiation-induced burns, for pain, CBD topical, there is some absorption into the skin itself, not so much into the bloodstream, but there's some emerging data about CBD for neuropathy. So you might want to Google and look it up. And, I know people are looking for something that's natural. And that might be something topical that you can apply. I recommend arnica oil for a lot of my patients, and things like that are also natural anti-inflammatories. Essential oils have been shown to have very limited effect, more in particular the really aromatic ones like the frankincense and things. But I mean, how much frankincense you can put on your hands and feet? You're gonna go to bed smelling like Christmas, So I would say use those sparingly, but those are kind of the natural things because they make your skin tingle. They have some of that menthol and they get into some of the cells in the skin, but it's a real challenge. And I would also recommend, if you've tried acupuncture, looking at the number of times, because the effect of acupuncture is cumulative. So if you had 1 or 2 treatments or 2 weeks of it versus several months.
I had months
Yeah.
of it. I had months of it.
goodness.
And I've had the CBD oil. My cousin actually sells that CBD oil, so he's given me that. So
Mhm.
yeah. Okay.
And about the CBD oil, I just heard a report this weekend is to check the source of it because some of the creams have been laced with narcotics. And so that's actually what was helping with the pain. So some of these things are not regulated. They're not regulated. And so you just want to check the source for purity and that other things are not being put in with it as well. And you need to look at that for kind of a lot of things that are over the counter and quote unquote natural. But I think there's been a lot of work being done in the dermatology space with CBD for eczema and that has had an anti-inflammatory effect. So it could possibly help the radiation dermatitis, but I haven't seen any specific studies for that indication, but it's a similar type of reaction that you get from just classic eczema. So that's something that possibly could be tried.
Watch for lead in the CBD products too. Some of them can contain high levels of lead as they're extracted. You're absolutely right, Doc.
So we all are, trying to be beautiful, trying to get our lives back together after we get our boobs cut off. And so, should we dye our hair or not? Should we use henna? Should we, Dr. Lindsay, you said, it's better to not do stuff like, should we rock, what's her name, Sin?
Candy. This is
Candy.
Candy.
Rock
We
a
are
candy.
Candy.
Rocking candy, we're trying to get our groove back, trying to be hot and sexy and whatever. And, so what should we be doing? Should we
So I just want to put this out there. Gray doesn't mean old anymore. There's a whole bunch of us on the social media community. We call ourselves gray bays, and these are some fine folks. So I don't put gray with old anymore.
I love it. Men been seeing foxes for years. Listen, honey.
my hair
Your
came
gray
back
is beautiful.
totally gray. My hair came back totally gray and totally straight. And took a year. And then after a year, the color came back. I don't really know what happened, but
Yeah, mine did the same.
Yeah, that's common. We even see that with some patients who have like alopecia areata, and when it first comes back like silver gray, and then it repigments, and so it's really phenomenal.
Mine didn't do that.
I have a little alopecia spot right here that it never really grew back.
So how about rinses and how about henna? I mean, I think, Dr. Dakota, you asked me about that and I did some research for you and I thought henna would be a great safe option, but what about rinses and other things?
Yeah, I think those are great options. Because I deal with I specialize in hair loss, various types of hair loss, not just chemotherapy related, but just, classic various types of alopecia. And I recommend semi-permanent and, temporary dyes for patients all the time, because permanent hair dye can definitely be more drying and lead to more breakage. So I think that's a great idea. I think henna is something that can be tried. I've had some patients who noticed that their hair texture with henna became a little bit more rough. So the source with everything is just like getting a good recommendation, because I think with many of these things, there's not standards. And so you could have one distributor who puts out a good product and another one that's not so good. So I have had some patients that felt like their hair texture felt very rough after it, but Dr. Dakota's looks very great. So I think it's something that's a good option that you could look into.
I would say that the product that I used, I'm not typing because my computer's behind me, was called Earth, like the Earth dye. And I spoke to the owner of the company, and he pretty much markets it to the naturalista, in terms of, I think more white women who were vegan and trying to be healthy were using it. And then he started marketing it to cancer patients. So he has a following of cancer patients that are not us, that are actually using it. And I told him who I was, African American, I had a million questions for him. And I think he guided me correctly. And the color I chose worked. And I just think it's a great option for those who, I think silver looks fabulous on you. But for me, I wasn't ready to as of yet. My grandmother's 91 and she still colors her hair. And so I think that I just wasn't ready to go silver yet. And I'm glad that henna is a safer option.
That's good. That's good. The other thing, add COVID to it. I used to be a fanatic about getting my mani-pedi. I haven't been. I'm like, I haven't been, and I'm really, my immune system sucks, so I'm afraid still to go. And my hairdresser actually came to my house and cut my hair outside with both of us with masks on in the rain a couple of weeks ago, because I'm afraid to go to the salon.
It's a good time to talk about strengthening hair and nails, though, during COVID, because people are not going to the salons, et cetera. So Dr. Lindsay, any tips for strengthening nails?
Sure. Now, that's one area where biotin can help. So I'm not a big fan of biotin for hair growth. I know all the blogs will tell you to use these mega doses of biotin, but you have to be really careful. The FDA issued a warning about a year ago that high doses of biotin can alter several of your lab results, like your thyroid function test results, even cardiac enzymes. So like if you're having a heart attack and you go in and you've been taking high doses of biotin, it may show your levels to be normal when you're actually having a heart attack, when you need those to be elevated. And there's really no data that this helps anyway for most forms of hair loss. If you have a biotin deficiency, which is extremely rare, it can be helpful, but biotin is great for the nail. So I recommend keeping it 5,000 micrograms or below. Not those mega doses is really, really important. And then I would say in terms of skin, anti-aging, sun protection, skin of color definitely needs sun protection because the sun is one of the biggest agers of skins. I think topical retinoids are really great for the skin in terms of helping to keep our skin tight and help fine lines and wrinkles. So that's a little thing I added in. It has nothing to do with breast cancer, but I just think everyone should be on these things. Vitamin C serums are also great, in terms of for anti-aging, just keeping the skin vibrant and even tone, because a lot of Black women, we deal with a lot of pigmentation issues, like a lot of hyperpigmentation, melasma, things like that.
I love it. Love it. And, Ricky, on the subject of research and clinical trials, I could see this as the types of clinical trials that Black women would jump on in terms of starting to look at what happens to their hair, their nails, certain products, hair dyes, registries for things that have not been tested on us before. And so, we're trying to change the way Black women especially think about clinical trials. Imagine if there were a trial where you use henna, hair dye, and you talk about it and you share your experiences. That's a clinical trial. That's not a drug trial. It's something that will help lots and lots of women. So I think that we're going to continue to explore this, because it's not always, drugs. It's not always you get the placebo and you're not getting standard of care, but things like this that can impact us directly are trials that we need to be a part of. And so I'm excited about this aspect of things, because I'm tired of hearing, we don't know, we never tried it on Black people before. Like this is 2020 and now we can. So that's exciting.
And Dr. Gary, adding on one more thing, in terms of the nails for the foot, like when we have patients who lose their nails or being treated for nail fungus, there's an FDA product called Keriflex, which kind of emulates a false nail, but it's hydrophobic, meaning it resists water, and it is antibacterial, antifungal. A lot of podiatrists are applying that while patients are being treated for nail loss on their toes, to have the cosmetic effect of having a beautiful nail so they can be in their sandals or what have you. So I would suggest that, you know, women who hopefully are finished with chemo and have had that are getting treated for nail fungus or nail problems, that's an option of keeping your sexy by having Keriflex being applied by your podiatrist.
So
What's
that
the
can
name of
only
that
be-
again?
Keriflex, Kereyflex, Keriflex.
Great, put that in the chat. So you guys, we're all talking about being beautiful, but you know what? You guys are so beautiful from within. It doesn't really matter about what the hair color and the makeup and the whatever, because you know we all have been through a battle, and we're so blessed to be here. And you know, it's really our spirits that make us beautiful. So anything on top of that is just the whipped cream, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And Cindy, you rocking. You are rocking candy over there. I just want to say, and don't be afraid as we talk about, you know, you go to your Look Good, Feel Better ACS programs at the hospitals, and a lot of times there aren't women who look like you, and there aren't wigs that are suitable for you. Do not be afraid to explore, you know, what you look like in wigs, and have fun with fashion and fun with makeup during this
Right.
time, because, you know, cancer sucks and we know it. And so this is a time for you to begin to get in touch with yourself again and try to do things that make you feel good. And, you know, if putting on a full face, beat the face, go for it. No face
Yeah.
at all, it's okay. You want to try some wigs? Now's the time. You always wanted short hair. Do it. You know, whatever makes you feel whole, makes you feel happy, makes you, you know, gives you some semblance of restoration, is something that you should explore without shame. Truly.
Right. Thank you, doctor. I appreciate that comment.
Gives you peace.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, we got to wrap up, but how can we follow you fine folks on social media? So we're going to start with Dr. Dakota. Tell us how we can find you for questions, for podiatry consultations, for testimonials, or just to chat with you.
Absolutely. So I recently just formed my YouTube channel, Dr. D, which went live today. So you can follow me on the personal journey that I have, answering questions as it pertains to food, fashion, fun, living with breast cancer. You can find me on IG at Styling by KD. That's K as in kite, D as in David. Facebook as KD Styling. And for your podiatry needs, I'm a podiatrist for the Heart Center of the Oranges at www.orangeheartcenter.net. So follow me. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Dr. Lindsay?
Sure, you guys can follow me on social media on Facebook or Instagram at Dr. Yolanda Lindsay, and it's YOLANDA LENZY. If you're interested in a virtual consultation, you can certainly contact, you can book one on my website, which is Lindsay Derm, LENZYDERM.com. And then also just want to let you guys know that I wrote a book called Getting to the Root, which is about hair loss. So it covers the 15 major types of hair loss that we treat. Also, it's chapters on nutrition and hair. So it's something that could be great for you or someone that you know or love who is struggling in this area, really written for a lay person to kind of understand. You just got diagnosed with telogen effluvium, excessive shedding, like what is that? And so kind of break it down for you. So you can check that out on our website as well.
Can you put that in the comments? Put the link in the comments for us? Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Who's next? Kelly, how can we reach you? How can we follow you?
Kelly.
Sure. So on Facebook, it's Kelly Southern with 2 E's. On Instagram, it's Mom is Fab. As a breast cancer survivor, I share quite a bit about breast cancer. I share facts that I find from some of you all's pages, and I share a lot of fun stuff. You'll see a lot of my family. You'll see my grandson, who is at but feel free to follow. Reach out to me if there's any other breast cancer survivors out there that just want to chat. I am more than happy to talk to you about my experience. Thank you.
Awesome. Then how can we reach you?
I'm on Facebook, Cynthia Washington. I've told my whole story. You know, I've told my whole story from the beginning. People have asked me to write a book. Maybe I will. I just got a bunch of ideas from listening to all of you doctors. So I'm really excited about this program, and I wish you all the best in continuing and reaching out to everyone. But I'm just on Facebook, nothing else.
That's all right. I'm Dr. Monique Gary on all social media, Facebook, the LinkedIn, the Instagram, the Twitter, the YouTube. I'm excited about a potential collaboration, Dr. Lindsay. I'm going to be hitting you up, and we're going to start a registry trial in collaboration with Touch BBCA, and start to look at some of these things for Black women. So yeah, Ricky, how can we reach you? Tell us about Touch.
You know, Ricky at Touch BBCA, and my email, and I'm Ricky Dove on Twitter and Instagram, and Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We have Touch BBCA, at Touch BBCA, if you want to reach out to us. And I'm going to share all of you guys' stuff on our Touch page, and we'll keep talking. And
absolutely.
Yep,
it touches the Black Breast Cancer Alliance. That's what BBCA stands for.
Yeah. So Black Breast Cancer Alliance. We believe Black breast cancer is a different disease, and we are dealing with it and trying on the road to eradicating it, because we should not be doing it.
That's true. So
Ricky, I shared your information with the Atlantic healthcare system. They were very excited, the Department of Oncology. So Atlantic healthcare system knows about Touch BBCA.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome. We hope that this has been relatable and reliable and real. That's why we started this, for our breasties especially, you know, so that you can have some information from people who look like you, who sound like you, but can bring some truth and some light to your lives. So thank you for joining us. I think we got to get ready to sign off, but this has been The Doctor Is In. We hope that you share it on your pages, share it with your family and friends, and join us next week, because we're here every Wednesday, 6 p.m. on blackdoctor.org. So we'll see you next week.
See you next. And thank you, Amgen, for supporting us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Dr. Lindsay, thank you. Dr. Dakota, thank you.
Guys. Thank you, Dr.
Lindsay.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.